everybody. Welcome to CSG's presentation this afternoon on technology in the Brisbane area. My name's David Hayes. I'm a Senior Scrum Master here at CSG, and I'll be talking you through a range of information around the technology we have at CSG. And there's two specific products that we'll be talking about today, Singleview and Ascendon. We'll have Christine talking about Singleview and Chris talking about Ascendon, but I'll be talking about the technology in general. Okay, so just to start with, interns here, we have an internship program here at CSG, and this forms a basis of our graduate intake. So we encourage people to apply for this. We do 2 intakes a year. And we create roles for the interns that work on real technology with real teams. So we integrate those interns into the teams to maximize their benefit from the experience they get at CSG. So they'll be using real tools, working on CSG's flagship products. In the past, interns have worked on things like our internal tooling, our user interfaces, and even our CSG hackathon. So there's some exciting things there. Okay, at CSG, we use Agile to guide our development processes. So with Agile, we have a scaled Agile framework in place, so we get forward visibility into what's happening. So we do 4 or 5 program increments per year, where we plan out what we're going to be doing in the next 3 months. So that helps the teams to understand where their contribution fits in the overall picture. It helps us to reduce risks, find dependencies between the teams, but it's very much about empowering team members to be able to make decisions that are purposeful for their contribution to CSG. And with those program increments, we do a retrospective at the end of each of those program increments, so that we're continually finding better ways to build products to match the needs of the market and to work for staff members. So within the Agile practice, we use Scrum on a fortnightly basis to break up the work. So teams get together and they plan at the start of a sprint what they're going to do. They have a daily stand-up where they catch up with each other to see what they're going to be doing over the next day. Throughout the sprint, they're grooming work for the next sprint. At the end of each fortnight, the team presents what they've built and gets feedback on that. So doing a demonstration to the rest of the organization. And that's a good way to acknowledge the value of the contribution of each individual. I'll point out as well that our graduates and interns also participate in those sprint reviews. So any work that you might be building as part of your internship, you get the opportunity to present that to the rest of the organization as well. At the end of each fortnight, the team does a retrospective so that the team can find ways that they can self-improve. And each team has a Scrum Master and a Product Owner there to assist the team in the processes. All right, moving on to the development tools that we use at CSG. Each developer is provided a Windows laptop, but our product itself runs in Linux. So each developer has a Linux virtual machine or AWS container where they are working on a day-to-day basis. We use a variety of IDEs. So some developers prefer to use Vim, some prefer to use VS Code, but things like C# is obviously more suited to Visual Studio, and Java is more suited to IntelliJ. So we're not locked into specific tools, but there is a range of tools that the developers use throughout the course of their work. And we have a wide variety of custom helper tools and scripts as well to serve the purpose of helping developers to build out quality code. So we'll maintain those in-house, but they come out of the retrospectives because we find better ways to do the work. So we have a range of other technologies that we use in addition to the development tools. So in terms of collaboration technologies, we have been doing a lot of video conferencing. So since the start of the pandemic, we're all working from home. So we're using Microsoft Teams to do video conferencing, chatting, all of those sorts of things. We using Trello to do our PI planning every 3 months. We have a range of office tools, obviously. But yeah, in terms of the day-to-day sprint, we tend to use Jira as our task tracking tool. We have an internal wiki called Confluence that we create knowledge bases and share information that way. And then we have a whole heap of code assisting tools. So from SVN and Git through other tools that help us to collaborate and to build quality code and quality products together. And it's important to note as well that we've had a evolution of the tools and languages that we've been using. So the Singleview product, for instance, has been in the market for quite some time. In terms of the technologies that we've used, it's evolved as we've gone along. So we have C code, we have C++ code, we have Python, we have Perl, we have AngularJS, and we've started incorporating some Go into our development stack as well. And we're using technologies like Docker and AWS, which you'll hear a bit more about later in the presentation, to help developers to build quality code and to have rich development environments. And we also work with a range of enterprise technologies as well. So Oracle databases are a big one. So we use those in both rack configuration and DataGuard. We have Tuxedo as Oracle middleware. We use Pacemaker and Redis and a whole heap of other enterprise technologies that you'd be able to get access to work on as part of your time at CSG. So you don't get pigeonholed at CSG. It is a wide variety of technologies and tools that you would be using, and you'd be moving from technology to technology, enriching all of those skill sets. Okay, I mentioned that CSG has 2 products that we're going to talk about. So the first technology we're going to talk about is Singleview. So at this point, I'll hand over to Christine to talk about the technologies that we use in Singleview.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dave. Hi, my name's Christine, and I'm here to tell you a little bit more about some of the technologies that we use in our CSG Brisbane office. So our product, Singleview, it's highly flexible and is deployed globally in a diverse range of industries, from telcos to utilities, from banking to insurance. And we need to ensure that whenever changes are made, whether they're big or small, whether they're for a new feature or for a bug fix, that these changes won't accidentally affect the existing functionality in other parts of the product. So on our next slide, we've got an image of one of our radiators. Now this is just a screen grab of what it displays, but every team in our office that's working on Singleview has one of these. And if you come to work with us, you'll also become very familiar with it. So each colored tile is a test run, and the color indicates the success of that run. So every time a commit is made to the code base, the change is verified and tested by a number of automated builds and automated tests. These tests include unit, integration, system, and performance. These tests are executed on all the supported versions of Singleview on various platforms, on various Windows environments, and also the different browsers that our customers may use. And these tests are run all the time. So continuous running of these tests allows us to quickly identify errors in related modules. It also helps us confirm that any change, whether it's in the code or the environment or changes in the browser versions, that they don't affect the stability or performance of the product. And that provides us with the confidence in the quality of the releases that we make. So if we move it to our next slide. So our next slide will show some of the technologies that we use to run our tests. I won't go through all of them, but you'll be able to see the logos there. Now you may have heard of or be familiar with some of these, but it's okay if you're not. If you have a strong programming background, you'll be able to work with and navigate your way through. And don't worry, your team members will be happy to help, and they're there to guide and support you every step of the way. So up next, Chris is going to take you through some of the technologies that are used for Ascendon development. But before I go, I'll just quickly check for any questions that may have come through. Okay. Well, it's been great talking to you, and I really look forward to meeting with some of you very soon. Bye for now. Thanks, Chris.
We do, sorry, before we continue on, we do actually have a question that's come through.
Oh, okay, great.
Naushin, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a postgrad student majoring in cybersecurity. Do we have any internship opportunities that suit them as an international student?
That's a great question. I'm actually going to ask Kenshin. Maybe she can provide us with some information on that.
Yes, we welcome international students, so feel free to send your resume to, I think we have the email address at the top. I'll repost that in the chat window again. So yes, definitely. And applications are open now.
Thanks, Kenshin. Chris?
Thank you, Christine. My name is Chris Lorato. I'm the lead architect of the second product that we wanted to talk about. These two products are the ones that are most actively developed out of Brisbane. The second product is called Ascendon. It's a fully cloud-native serverless charging software as a service, which is a pretty big change from Singleview, which is the traditional. You heard Christine talk about making sure all the versions of Singleview are not affected by new work. We do it a little differently in Ascendon. We're actually hosting that as a service, which means we really only have one version that's active at any one time. So we have a lot of similarities. So may I have the next slide, please? Similarities between Singleview and Ascendon development is really process. Ascendon is a Scrum-based agile practices development organization. The same sort of continual testing, continual build environment that we have in Singleview. It's really only when we get around to delivering that we have a difference, software as a service versus enterprise software that's run by the end customer or someone on their behalf. Technology, though, is a little different. It's probably been the most exciting thing that's happened in my career to see the transition into cloud-based technologies. It's probably the biggest revolution that's happened in my career, and that career goes back a while and spans things like the advent of Scrum and Agile, and even all the way back to OO emerging. But I would still stand by that statement. Cloud is really changing everything. So by cloud, what I mean is that Singleview, Ascendon is moving to both into the cloud and taking advantage of the serverless technologies there. So you've probably had some experience maintaining operating systems and working with databases and so forth. Ascendon still uses things like that, but we really outsource a lot of the operational aspects of that to AWS and just concentrate on using and orchestrating those technologies. So I've listed on this slide in front of us the serverless technologies, and I'll call out a few highlights here. Lambda is probably the most serverless of all of the AWS stuff. You just write the code. AWS works out how to deploy that, how many instances of that to run, and does all that heavy lifting of availability and scalability and things like that. Fargate lets us throw Docker images at AWS, and it will orchestrate out how many of those images we need, uses algorithms that we provide for scaling and so forth. Athena is really just the AWS version of MySQL. DDB is a key value pair database. Athena is an interesting one. I'm going to skip forward a bit to S3. S3 is basically a file system. And then Athena lets us do queries straight onto that file system. So for some data, it's not going to be useful to pull that into a database. It's structured data that self-describes its schema. So I'm thinking JSON, XML, that sort of thing. And Athena lets us run queries directly off the file system, which is pretty cool. We've got some other integration stuff I've called out there, SNS, SQS. And then there are a few things that are more akin to the old world. AWS provides a Redis service called Elastic Cache. And you can still spin up servers in AWS. They call it EC2, but they're basically a server in the cloud. Those things are not as serverless as the stuff above, but from time to time we will use those. So the things that I would take away from this is there's a commonality between the two products in terms of the way we build the software. There's different tools in Ascendon compared to Singleview. And if you've got a leaning towards a career in building cloud-based software, I would heartily recommend CSG Brisbane as a good place to kick that journey off. May I have the next slide, please? I did mention how the software is delivered a little differently, and the Ascendon product is delivered as a service. So not only do we write the code, we actually operate the code. So our stand-ups each morning, apart from talking about our software development for that day, we are also pulling up graphs of how the system's been running. And we're actually looking at live systems there. So I've just pulled a couple of graphs out here, which is showing some subscribers. It's a telecommunications system being signed onto the system. That's the top graph. And the bottom graph is pretty exciting. That's auto scaling. So that's the Ascendon product scaling out as to respond to customer demand. So when there's lots of phone calls being made, we spin up more hardware and then put it away when the demand drops off. Which is pretty exciting world to be in. So our teams are not just building the code and testing the code and doing all those good things. We're also delivering into production, monitoring how production is going, and on a daily basis reacting to what we're observing. So that's the DevOps aspect of Ascendon, which is a pretty exciting environment. I really enjoy that. It's fun to not to wait around for many weeks to hear about how it's going. We can actually deliver something and the next day have a look.